morning, everyone. Hey, this is Adam Spriggs. I'm pretending to be Elliot today. So since we're doing this in a European time zone, welcome to the this session of the Melbourne Marketing Cloud Developers Group. I'm pleased to have Elliot Home here, who's a product manager for the Marketing Cloud Services, or Marketing Cloud Messaging Service APIs, and he's going to do a presentation for us this morning, which is pretty exciting. I know personally I've been talking with some clients who are interested in doing this and wanting to kick the tires myself, so I appreciate Alan taking some time out to give us this presentation. So we'll have a few minutes at the end to have some questions. So thank you, and Alan, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Adam. Hi, everybody. So as Adam mentioned, I'm here on the Marketing Cloud. We've been working on some interesting and exciting new APIs as it relates to messaging. So I'm going to go into detail about that and just talk a little bit high level about transactional messaging in general, the value that it can bring to the brand, the ways that it is utilized, and just to kind of cover what we have today and even moving forward. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. First, just want to state that there may be some forward-looking statements in this document, so and presentation. So please make your buying decisions only off of current, existing, and currently announced products. So taking a step back and talking about transactional messaging, we have a very narrow scope of what that is, and you may also share what this narrow scope of transactional messaging is, but we define it as something that a person will initiate, and it's obviously non-promotional, but the key thing is that it's confirming the completion of a process, so they basically invocated it, and they expect it to be delivered pretty much immediately upon invocation. So that would be use cases like account verification, password reset, 2FA. Oftentimes these are very time sensitive as well. So again, the immediacy of the delivery is very, very important. The other type of a transactional use case is less ad hoc, one and done type of an idea. You might actually have to send out batch-like notifications. But again, it's very important in that it's not promotional, but it is something that is critical to be known to the audience immediately. And again, from a use case perspective, this would look like weather alerts, financial alerts. You might have some morning shipping delivery notifications that would go out. And we tend to separate it between what is a system versus a person initiated. If somebody's at a point of sale versus you've, your marketing automation, your confirmation automation is set up to deploy a series of messages out. So real quick, talking about what we've seen in terms of transactional messaging on the Marketing Cloud over the past few years, and the industry is related to transactional messaging. There's been a large presence in the consumer entertainment space, for example, where right around holiday season, everybody's getting all their new electronics, and so everybody's creating their new accounts. Or they forgot what their account was, so they're getting all their password resets, and so we see huge volumes coming through as transactional messages, 15 million per day, upwards of 2.1 per hour, 2.1 million per hour at peak times in the holiday seasons. And then for healthcare services as well, again, appointment reminders are especially important. You want those to make sure they get to them as fast as possible. Usually it's like a 24-hour notice, so you don't want those to be delayed in any way, so they can call in immediately with any sort of changes. And again, we see some pretty significant volume around that as well, 2 million in SMS and emails per day. And then around FinServe, oftentimes we don't go into FinServe, our own accounts all that often, or they're asking us to make changes to our passwords. So we see a lot of password reset type of use cases in this industry. And this industry does tend to lean quite heavily into SMS as well. As people are on the go, and when you're talking about getting your balance notifications or insurance updates, you want to get it to however is most immediate and in the person's pocket, and that's through the phone. And then in terms of transactional messages, as it relates to your brand, there's some really interesting points here. I'm sure this audience is very familiar with it, but just to cover it again, these always have extremely high engagement. And because of that, there's a lot of opportunity to add information about your brand and opportunities to engage with your brand. So you're not trying to promotionalize anything, but just kind of remind, hey, here's Facebook location, here's our Twitter handle. And we're starting to even see where you can generate product reviews as well through these types of use cases. So ultimately, when you are combining then your transactional messages on the same platform with Marketing Cloud, you can basically take advantage of the consistent branding, and you can take advantage of being able to model and understand how that engagement and what parts of those emails that they are engaging with. So you can continue to refine and take advantage of even your transactional messages so that they are very engaged with your brand. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we have today and then move into the new transactional messaging, just to familiarize everybody. Today we have, I kind of bucketed them into 4 different APIs in order to send messages across our channels. We have our existing SOAP, which is probably the most utilized way of triggering messages and triggering transactional message types. We also have a REST endpoint as well. It's effectively a wrapper for our SOAP, but it does allow you to use REST patterns to an extent for you to send triggered emails. Then on SMS and push, those are just purely REST, and they exist as their own independent services. And then from a UI perspective, as you know, we have the different studios, and you configure the way that you want these outbound or triggered sends to go out through each of the studios respectively. So here I'm just showing email and mobile connect, but there's also the group connect side of things as well, where you can trigger emails to go out. The key thing I'm trying to show here, though, is that you do have to kind of operate in independent locations, and it's not as uniform, I think, as maybe our customers have always hoped it would be. So I just want to, this may resonate with you. It might be just good to know. A lot of our customer asks around messaging and messaging APIs is they ask for easier integration, and that's everything from give me modern UIs, give me SDKs, something that I can use in order to get up and running faster and decrease my time to value and decrease my cost to serve on transactional messages. The other here is high performance. So, today we have the concept of high priority sending, which does a pretty good job of getting the emails right out the door, and that's what a lot of our transactional users use today. But again, the market is demanding additional performance, and so we're making sure to focus on that. And on the predictability side of things, that speaks to basically being able to understand what is going on with my send and knowing how my sends are performing in as real-time fashion as possible. So part of our new transactional service is both increasing performance with a new way that we've optimized our platform on these specific transactional APIs, but also allowing you to consume near real-time event notifications through a webhook service, which I'll cover here in a bit. Additional features too. So give me a little bit more than what I see within triggered sends, and maybe make it more specific to just the transactional use cases. I want to ensure that the features are specific to sending these emails as fast as possible. They want increased collaboration in general, just being able to, triggered sends today are kind of, they've been around a long time. The way you configure it isn't very supportive of multiple collaborators getting in there. So that's top of mind, and we're focusing on improving that. And then operational awareness is around, again, telling me what is happening as fast as you can in a near real-time fashion as possible with the sends. So let's talk about taking that feedback that we've gotten and how we've applied it into our new transactional messaging service. So this diagram here basically shows what we're seeing a lot of customers asking for, how they want to architect their services. So they're going to have a third-party system come through and trigger an event, a send event, using our new API. So in this case, let's say it's a receipt, and you have your first name, your last name, and then some data associated with the receipt, the personalization attributes with that. That'll go into what is basically, we have a new type of send definition called a transactional send definition. And it's built to be very supportive of these low latency types of sends that you want to accomplish. So we can write the information to a data extension. We'll apply the subscriber data, and then obviously you're going to have an email template as well, which you want to render against. Once that's personalized and shipped out, you'll get a notification back to say, hey, this has gone out the door. And we'll deliver that in near real time through a webhooks service we call event notification services to an endpoint that you have standing up listening for these events. We'll also send not sent events, so basically events that are that cannot be processed due to some sort of an error. Could have been list detective error, could have been an attribute error. There's a variety of them. Or you might get a sent event, and then later in time, you'll see that when our bounce management system captures a bounce, we'll ship that as well back on the event notification service. So it's a very asynchronous model, but the idea is to get you that information. So in terms of the new APIs that we created, we have 4 new APIs, maybe 5, including some around event notification services. So there's a new way to create definitions. We have a RESTful endpoint, and it's accessed through our messaging endpoint. And so where you see channel there, so we have email today, and then you can create a new definition, update, delete, or read back definitions. And that is, again, where you will specify what is your content template, your data extensions, and or lists that you want to set up. Each definition has the concept of a queue. So if you were to inactivate the definition, let's say you want to pause it momentarily, make a change to it, you just want to maybe fix something upstream, and you can't fix the upstream service fast enough, so you want to pause the definition on Marketing Cloud first. You can do that, and then you can get statistics on the queue depth, and you can actually delete out the entire queue as well, just like you would see on triggered send UIs today, but this is an API operation against these specific types of definitions. Then to send, we have a new messages endpoint, and these actually bring forward a new type of an attribute here called message key. And message key is a specific identifier that you're going to use to basically track the send to that recipient through the system, and it'll go all the way through until it even comes out through the webhooks. So if you send in message key ABC, you'll be able to see then through the webhooks whether ABC was sent, not sent, or bounced. And then from a tracking perspective, this is the configuration in order to get webhooks stood up. So you register a callback URL that you have. You have to verify that URL. And we have all these processes outlined in our docs. And then you define subscriptions against it. So it's basically for a given endpoint, you can say on that endpoint, I want to listen for only bounces, or I want to listen for bounces and sends, and I don't care about errors. I want errors to go to maybe a different endpoint. So it just allows you to be able to define what specific and interesting events should go to that listening URL. So let's walk through kind of a mock-up here on how you would configure these new APIs. So first you would create the definition, very similar to how triggered send definitions work today. You give it a content identifier, you create a definition key, which is very similar in function to a customer key or an external key. So it's just the object is a definition, so we call it definition key. You give it a unique name, a description, and then supply a list by which you want to bring those subscribers into. And then you can set up on the callback side the types of events you want to subscribe to. So here you can see at the top of that curl, we're posting to a different endpoint called ENS subscriptions. Let's say we already have a callback set up, and And you basically say, hey, I have this subscription. I'm going to call it shipping events, and I want to subscribe to all events. I want everything that's sent, everything that didn't send, which is basically what errored out, and what bounced. And then you'll be able to receive those basically on that callback that you set up. And then in your source code, which hosts the actual messaging system, here you would be able to actually post then against our messages endpoint. With that, you'll see that number 49034. That's just some number I made up that represents the message key that you want to use in order to track a send to this particular recipient against the definition, so against the template, and you provide the personalization attributes with it. So this is how you would do it in email, and this year as well, we're going to be releasing SMS version. We anticipate releasing a SMS version as well. And so here you'll see that the semantics are very, very similar. So a key thing from a usability perspective is that we wanted to move toward uniformity of our APIs when it comes to messaging, so that there's opportunity here for potential code reuse, and you don't have to necessarily learn every little nuance between each channel. Obviously, email and SMS will still have different attributes representative for the channel. But in order to get up and running quickly, in order to get POCs up and running quickly, the semantics are going to be very similar. So today, if you want to go take a look at how all this works, we have our documentation up on our developer docs. And you can kind of walk through the process that you need to get up and running to use a transactional messaging API, and you can also find the API references as well in the docs. So that's it on the presentation portion. I'm going to move over to the demo portion. Let me just change what I'm sharing. Okay, so I'm within PAW client right now, which is just like a post. And for those of you who may not have gotten caught up with it, we have a new way of requesting authentication tokens, access tokens, and it uses OAuth2 type of a handshake. So what I'm going to do is just get a new access token. And we have this concept of scope now. So where scope is basically like permissions, and you can see what permissions are set based on the response when you get this token. And our tokens are also only live for 20 minutes now. So if I come into creating a definition here, what I've provided is to create a send definition. I have the particular content that I want to use, and here I have content called Makana appointment reminder. So effectively, what I want to do is start sending out appointment reminders for some doctor's office. I provided a definition key. So how is it that I'm going to be referencing this definition in future API calls? And I give it a unique name. I'm not very creative, so I just copy and pasted the definition key here. Key thing to remember is that both the name and the definition key have to be unique. The description does not have to be unique. I just gave it a short description here. And then I'm going to be writing to my all subscribers list and writing to a data extension as well, a triggered send data extension. So I just created one here, and we can see, go to my pretty view of this. Let's see, response text. Here we go. So this is the bare minimum that you need to configure. Data extension is actually optional, but upon the response, you can kind of see we've also made some assumptions then based on how you want this to be created. So you could normally set a classification type. It has to be a transactional type of classification, otherwise you can't create it. But here we just use default transactional, so I didn't supply anything. And then as well, we have some additional options around how you want to manage your subscribers. So just like before on triggered sends, you can add subscribers and update subscribers against the list. if you wanted to override for this types of transactional use cases, what the subscriber email address is. And then for options, we just have leak tracking here, so you can turn that on or off. So just like you can post, so we posted here to create this, you can go back and query that as well. So let me make sure I have that. Yeah. So here, after I create it, I can come back and get the definition and all of the parameters around it. I could update the definition as well. So here, if I wanted to modify the status of the definition, I could change it to inactive or active. It's currently active right now. We'll come back and deactivate it later in order to show how that works. And then we can also fetch all of our definitions here in batch. So I can find all of the different definitions that I have, and then I can also change some query options that I have. So for example, I can modify page number or page sizes here if I only want to get back 2 at a time. And then I can go to different pages as well. What's my second page? And you can see it changes, and then I can also filter. So here I'm only showing active. If I want to get all of mine here, you can see we have a deleted one as well on that second page. So there's some query properties here that we support and order by as well. So I'm ordering by definition key. I can also order by name. And then the other feature here, which just to go over, if you delete a definition, what we do is we will shift basically that definition over to its own type of a definition key. So you don't totally lose the context of the object, but since we know in some use cases you have very strict semantics around your definition key naming. And so because because definition key has to be reused and it has to be unique, what we'll do is we'll just take that object and rename it as a deleted definition key, and then you can reuse that definition key again when you recreate it. So now we're going to go ahead and send it. Let me get my email set up here. I don't think you guys are seeing my email here. Let's see, new share. Let me try to add my inbox. Here it is. Share. Here we go. Okay, so I'll go back to, hopefully you guys can see my inbox as well. And so now when I go to send an email address, send an email against that, I'm going to have provide an actual UUID here. So it's message key can be whatever you want. I'm just creating a UUID for simplicity's sake. The definition key that I actually want to send against is that one I just created. So
hey, Alan, we're still seeing your inbox.
Oh, are you?
Yep.
Well, then I'm going to flip it back. All right, so you have to bear with me while I flip.
There we go.
Screens manually. Okay, so here what I did now is I'm operating on the messages route. So where before I was operating on the email definitions route under the messaging service, now I'm going to operate under the messages route and provide a message key. Here's the definition key that I just created, you saw previously, and then we have this recipient object. So for singleton types of sends, you're going to put the message key up in the URI and provide the recipient data against this recipient object. So we're going to have the contact key, who it's going to, and along with their personalization attributes. So I guess I should change this to represent who I actually am, this guy. So we're going to go ahead and send it. So what you'll see is we basically have the concept of accepted. So everything is asynchronous right now. So unlike our existing message definition sends REST API, there's no async queue here with options of making it synchronous. Everything is asynchronous now, and you're talking directly to the message handlers. So we've reduced the amount of upstream queuing in order to reduce overall latency. So I got back my my message key here. I have no errors with the send. And if I come back to message status, I'm going to need to copy this. And I want to get the status of that send. So here, come on, copy paste, work for me. And there we go. I can't do my copy and paste correctly. So what I wanted to show you was how to fetch that key back, but I am not doing it right here. E, oh my gosh, I totally missed it. Copy and paste. There we go. So you can see, obviously, that wasn't a message key at all. So here we can see the email was actually sent. So a webhook event was generated as well, but I can sanity check if I don't have webhooks connected. And again, then if I come to my inbox, if I can find it, there it is. So here's the send. So unfortunately, I can't pivot fast enough to show you the very, very brief latency that there is, but I recommend you try it on your own and just see how quickly these messages land in your inbox. There is no more high or medium or low priorities. All messages go out as fast as possible. All right, so I'm going to go back to just my pod to just show you just a couple more things here. So the other question is, okay, so that's singleton sends. How do we send batch? And the thing I want to talk about is sending batch too is you can use this to send singleton messages as well, and there's no difference in terms of performance. So if you want to use this type of a structure, this array-based structure, in order to sometimes send one message, sometimes send multiple messages, but using the same API endpoint, cool, that's great. A few things that changed: you don't put message key up in the URI anymore. You just post to the messages endpoint, and you can put message key directly within the payload. For each contact as well, so you can choose to provide a message key, or if you don't provide it, we'll generate one for you. So here we can see that this is the one that I had generated previously, and this is the message key that we had generated for you. So if I go and take a look at this particular message key, you can see I put in kind of a bogus name here. So if I were to go and get on that message, let me see if I can actually copy and paste these message keys in accurately this time. I think I did. So here, I was missing specific types of fields that was needed in order to get that send out the door. So again, if this happened, you would have received this as well on your webhook, this event in your real time as well. So where I'm querying it here, in the transactional world, you don't want to be querying, reaching in, especially not in a singleton fashion. You want to be able to be listening for these events and processing them yourself on the fly, so you can take immediate action on it as soon as you see something like a not sent, and potentially change the way that you're try an alternate email address or try a completely different channel. That's a lot of the patterns that I tend to see around transactional messaging use cases. If something's very urgent, and the SMS, for example, doesn't work, they'll fall back to email or vice versa. Also around, you say, okay, well, that's great. If I let's say I don't have webhooks, or you're in the process of getting webhooks. Through the API, what we do is we allow you to go at least see what wasn't sent, and then otherwise everything is assumed sent. And then you can go and monitor your bounces and whatnot through the existing capabilities in Marketing Cloud if you can't consume that off of webhooks. So here, what we have. We're going to get against this messages endpoint, but I have some additional URL parameters here. So the type that we want to query against is not sent. That's the only type that we support currently on this route, and you can set your page sizes. So here I can see the list of all of the different types of not sents that I had been receiving, along with the message keys associated with it, so I can always go back and try to resolve that later in time. So I think that basically wraps up my demonstration. I think we'll have enough time here for questions.
Hey, Alan, this is Adam. So how do we go about requesting this be enabled in the Marketing Cloud business unit, and what kind of information do we need to provide for that provisioning process?
Yes, thank you for reminding me about that. So today, if you go look under the release notes in Marketing Cloud, it'll direct you to a request form in order to supply your enterprise ID, not your mid, your enterprise ID. So we're enabling this at enterprise levels. And just an email address and just a quick snippet about your use case. Those requests basically fall to me. And at the either on the Friday or the Monday following that week of the request, you will get an email stating that the account has been enabled. So we'll be turning this on for everybody over the course of the next few weeks, but right now we just want to be able to really help and support those of you who are really excited to get on this. And it's a lot easier to reach out to me if I know that that you're using or that you've signed up for it.
Awesome. I have a couple of questions, and we can certainly open it up since we have some time left. So you kind of hinted at it, but you do not have to have a callback for the webhooks, right? When you create a definition.
That's right. You don't have to go through a callback. In fact, I failed to kind of cover that aspect of it here. So just to briefly go through how to do it if you wanted to. So under the platforms resource, you can create a new type of callback, and then what you have to do is verify it. So we provide you some verification information, and there's a bunch of rules about how to make verification work. I'm not going to go into detail on that. It's all documented. But then after you create the actual event, just like I showed or you create the callback, just as I showed in the presentation, then you just supply the event types that you want to send against. And I can show you a view of what that looks like here. Let me just pivot off to a different screen. So here, do you see my thank you slide?
Yes.
Okay, so if I come over here, let's try to zoom in here. So this is us basically capturing our different types of events that are coming through a callback endpoint. So very similar information you get when you try to read it back by querying it yourself through the route. So you can see that there's the type conventions are the same. You can see what send definitions it came from, what mid and EID came from, along with the information specifically about what happened. So I don't know if I have a not sent in here, but yeah, so to answer your question, Adam, and good question, you don't need it, but I am seeing a lot of really interesting use cases and patterns around where it's very advantageous to set it up because you can do so much with it. Then you can instrument your own type of real-time monitoring with it. You can, again, take those secondary actions if there's a problem. Oftentimes when you have something like two-factor authentication, if it doesn't go out, you want to understand why immediately rather than waiting for somebody to call in for their code because they didn't receive it over email.
Yeah, I could see definitely some cool uses for that too. I know it's not for promotional sins, but the appeal of having real-time metrics on deliverability to some degree. It was really a cool thing because right now a lot of that stuff isn't readily available via API. So.
Yeah, that's a good point, and that's feedback that we're getting too. And so we're kind of ingesting all of that right now. We have this new service out there, event notification services. We've onboarded the transactional use cases against this specific API first. And now as customers get acclimated and try to understand the benefits of it, we're taking that input and, determining our roadmap decisions moving forward from that.
Another curiosity question. Can you create the definitions inside of Marketing Cloud? And if so, where does that live? Or is it only API for creating the definitions?
Yeah, so this is only API for creating the definitions. It's a full API experience. And that in this current release, that is true for both definition sending, message sending, and event notification services, callback and subscription creation and verification.
Okay.
So all of those are only API. In the next release, there is a UI that will be available for subscription management for the event notification services. And then for definitions, we're currently working on providing those capabilities, but we don't have any targeted timeframes at the moment. So it's API only for the time being.
Okay. So not even just like if we create a message, it's not going to show in interactions under triggered sends at all. It's completely hidden from the UI.
That's correct.
Okay. Well, we'll see how this goes, but we have 15 besides us, Alan, on the line. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to speak up, or if you'd rather chat them, I can read them off, and we can see if Alan can answer. All right. So I know I just requested access last week for this API, and so I'm excited to try it. I have been talking with a client who this would be perfect for what they're doing, and as a Marketing Cloud developer working for a partner, I feel like it's keeping up with this kind of thing is a cool part of my job, and being able to dog food some of this myself is really helpful to make sure I have all the right information for working with clients. And also, this is one of those realms where I'm glad to see Salesforce investing in, because this is only for developers. I mean, I'm kind of like, oh, there's no interface for this at all. And part of me is like, oh, wow. And also part of me is like, oh, cool. That this is a developer thing. This is not a marketer thing. And so I feel like that's a hat tip to the engineering community that works in Marketing Cloud. So thank you, Alan, for that. So you said in the coming weeks, this is going to be enabled by default. Is that right? And is that going to be part of the documentation in the release notes for upcoming release? Is that right?
Yeah, what we'll do, you'll see that we'll basically be updating our release notes, and right now it says to sign up, go to this page and put in your information. When that disappears, there's basically no more sign-ups needed. It'll just be available. So, again, if you're interested now and you want to jump in, just sign up. I believe we have the link both on the documentation and the release notes. And then otherwise, if you just kind of want to sit back and wait for that notice to go away and then just jump on it when you want, that's fine too.
Alan, we had a question about getting your deck and also your paw collection.
Oh yeah, my paw collection. Yeah. How that goes. I'm trying to create a Postman collection. So paw does a really bad job of exporting, and paw doesn't allow me to export, as far as I know, my environment variables separate from my file.
Yep.
So I think that's great feedback. If this audience attends the developer office hours at some point, I'll make a note to go and try to socialize that and share it up on that community's Trailblazer community page.
All right, cool. We are not having a meeting until April. So the first part of April is when our next Marketing Cloud developer office hours will be. So I'm involved in those, so I can pass that along.
Okay, I will try to look in the meantime on the most appropriate place to get that publicly, and maybe we can just kind of inform this group of that.
Yeah, there have been some other official, I don't know, say official, I guess. I think there might be on the GitHub repo. There's a Postman collection for the other REST endpoints, and they're kind of old, I think, but I know our team has used them as starting points for a lot of REST consulting. So that might be the place. I don't know. This is kind of new, so.
Yeah, that's great. Let's, Adam, I'll follow up with you on that.
Okay, awesome. That was a good question. Any others? Well, all right. Thank you, everyone. I think, Alan, you've got another presentation in another time zones later on today. Is that right? Okay. Yep. Thank you, everybody, for attending. And I will make sure that this recording gets saved somewhere. And thank you, Alan.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye.